What you are hearing right now is not ordinary. This is not another message drifting through the noise of the day. This is an interception, urgent, deliberate, and timed with precision. January 13th is not a random marker on a calendar. It is a spiritual checkpoint, a moment when something that was moving quietly behind the veil was suddenly halted. The word interception matters here because it tells us that a trajectory was already in motion. Something had permission to move only until heaven stepped in. And heaven did not step in gently. It intervened with force, clarity, and authority because the window for response is narrow and the consequences of delay are real. The title of this message carries weight for a reason. When an alert is delivered with urgency, it is because silence would have been more dangerous than disruption. Something was attempted in secret, not loudly, not publicly, not in ways that would immediately draw attention. It was subtle, calculated, and designed to pass beneath awareness. That is how many pivotal shifts begin, quietly, until they are suddenly irreversible. This is why the interception happened when it did, and why you are hearing about it now rather than later. January 13th represents a line drawn in the spirit, a moment where progression was stopped and routed before it could harden into consequence. What makes this moment extraordinary is not just the warning itself, but who delivered it and how. Archangel Michael does not move without cause. He does not break protocol for routine matters. His assignments are reserved for enforcement, defense, and the preservation of divine order. When protocol is broken, it signals that the situation exceeded normal thresholds. It means the matter was time-sensitive, that waiting would have allowed something unauthorized to anchor itself more deeply. This alert did not come through layers. It did not come through intermediaries. It came directly because time ran out. January 13th stands as a pivot point. Before this date, there was movement allowed within limits. After this date, those limits were revoked. That is what an interception does. It interrupts momentum. It freezes what was advancing and forces a reassessment. This is not about fear. This is about awareness. Fear paralyzes, but awareness positions. You are being positioned to understand that something intended to move forward quietly was exposed before it could fully manifest. That exposure alone is evidence of protection already at work. Many will ask, why now? The answer is simple and unsettling at the same time. Because now is the last moment before escalation. The alert is not arriving early, and it is not arriving late. It is arriving exactly on time. The urgency you feel is not emotional pressure. It is alignment pressure. It is the weight that comes when timelines converge and decisions must be acknowledged. Heaven does not rush without reason. When urgency is present, it is because cooperation is required on the human side of the equation. This message is important because it reframes what January 13th truly represents. It is not a date to fear, but a date to recognize. Recognition is power. When something attempted in secret is brought into the light, its strength is already diminished. Secrecy is a strategy that relies on ignorance. Once awareness enters, the strategy collapses. That is why this alert had to be delivered openly and clearly. Not to cause panic, but to prevent vulnerability. The phrase "watch immediately" is not a suggestion. It is a directive rooted in timing. Delayed understanding can be as dangerous as no understanding at all. This interception required witnesses, not spectators, but aware participants who would hold the knowledge, adjust their posture, and remain spiritually alert. Awareness itself becomes a form of reinforcement. When people are awake, certain plans cannot proceed as intended. There is also something deeply reassuring embedded in this urgency. Interception means defense was successful. It means something did not get as far as it intended. It means there was resistance strong enough to halt progression. That alone should settle your spirit. You are not being warned because something has already won. You are being warned because something was stopped, and now must be addressed properly so it does not attempt to reroute. This is why the connection between the title and this moment matters so deeply. An urgent interception implies both danger and protection operating at the same time. The danger explains the urgency. The protection explains the timing. January 30th becomes the dividing line between what was attempted and what was prevented. And you are hearing this now because understanding locks the interception into place. As this unfolds, remember this: heaven does not overreact. When protocol is broken, it is because the standard response was no longer sufficient. This alert exists because you needed to know, not tomorrow, not eventually, but now. What comes next will build on this foundation. Everything that follows depends on understanding why this moment cannot be ignored. The interception has already occurred. The question now is how it will be addressed from this point forward. What was attempted did not announce itself. It did not arrive with noise, chaos, or visible disruption. That is precisely why it was dangerous. The most effective movements in the unseen realm rarely begin loudly. They begin quietly, beneath attention, beneath awareness, beneath expectation. What was attempted in secret was designed to move unnoticed, to pass through gaps created by distraction, fatigue, and spiritual complacency. This is how subtle shifts take root, by convincing people that nothing significant is happening at all. Secrecy is never accidental in spiritual operations. When something hides, it is because exposure would weaken it. Light disrupts unauthorized movement. Awareness collapses hidden agendas. What was attempted relied on remaining unseen long enough to establish momentum. Once momentum is established, resistance becomes harder. That is why interception was required before the movement could settle into permanence. This was not about reacting to a visible crisis. This was about preventing a quiet strategy from maturing. Understand this clearly. Not everything that threatens alignment comes through obvious opposition. Some things come through suggestion, through subtle redirection, through delays that feel harmless, through internal shifts that feel natural but slowly move people off course. The attempt was not to destroy outright, but to alter trajectory just enough that correction would feel inconvenient later. That is why it had to be addressed early, before the adjustment became normalized. The phrase attempted in secret also reveals intent. There was an awareness that this movement could not withstand scrutiny. It required privacy to function. It required people to remain unaware of its presence. That alone tells you it was not authorized to operate in the open. Divine operations do not fear exposure. They are strengthened by it. Anything that must hide from awareness is already operating outside alignment. This is where discernment becomes critical. Many people associate danger only with obvious disruption, but some of the most consequential shifts occur during seasons of apparent calm. When nothing seems wrong, vigilance often drops. That is when subtle intrusions find space to move. This is not about paranoia. It is about perception. Being alert does not mean being afraid. It means being awake. The interception did not happen because the attempt succeeded. It happened because it was detected. Detection is mercy. It means sensitivity was still active. It means the environment had not grown numb. Once something is detected, it can be aggressed. What remains hidden continues to operate unchecked. This is why the alert exists. Not to amplify the attempt, but to neutralize it through awareness and alignment. Some listening to this may already feel confirmation stirring within them. A sense that something felt slightly off without being able to name it. A subtle unease that did not match external circumstances. That is often how hidden movements are perceived, not as fear, but as quiet dissonance. The interception validates that perception. It confirms that what you sensed was not imagination, but awareness picking up on misalignment. Now, here is where responsibility enters. When something attempted in secret is brought into awareness, it creates a shared obligation. Not everyone will act on it, but everyone who hears it is accountable for how they respond internally. Ignoring awareness does not restore innocence. It forfeits protection. Aggressing awareness, even quietly, reinforces the interception already in place. This is also why community matters in moments like this. Awareness strengthens when it is shared. Alignment multiplies when people move together. If this message resonates, if you sense its weight and timing, do not keep it isolated. Engage with it. Acknowledge it. Share it with those who are receptive. This is not about spreading alarm. It is about reinforcing clarity. When more people are aware, hidden strategies lose room to maneuver. This is where your action becomes part of the response. Take a moment to support the spread of this message. Like the video so it reaches those who are meant to hear it. Share it where discernment is valued. Comment if this aligns with what you have been sensing. Subscribe to remain connected as clarity continues to unfold. These actions are not about algorithms, they are about alignment. Each interaction extends the reach of awareness, and awareness is exactly what neutralizes secrecy. Remember, the attempt failed not because it was weak, but because it was exposed early. Exposure shifts power dynamics instantly. What operates in secret depends on time and obscurity. Once those are removed, it must either retreat or reveal itself. The interception removed both time and obscurity. What remains now is stabilization, ensuring that the halted movement does not attempt to re-enter through a different channel. That is why this cannot be treated casually. Casualness creates openings. This is not a call to anxiety, but to intentional presence. Pay attention to subtle shifts, to quiet nudges, to moments where redirection is offered. The response required is not dramatic, but deliberate. Awareness maintained over time seals what was intercepted in a moment. As this unfolds, hold on to this truth. The very fact that you are hearing this means you were not meant to be unaware. Awareness is not given randomly. It is assigned. What was attempted in secret was stopped in the open, and now it must be addressed through continued clarity. What comes next will reveal why this awareness matters even more than it seems right now. There are moments where heaven responds through order, and there are moments where heaven responds through authority. This was the latter. Archangel Michael was not dispatched casually, nor was this alert routed through the usual channels of gradual revelation. He was sent personally because the situation demanded enforcement, not observation. When Michael moves, it is because something has crossed a line that cannot be negotiated back into place. His presence signals that a boundary was tested and that response could no longer wait for process. To understand why this matters, you must understand what broke protocol truly means. Divine protocol exists to maintain order, timing, and balance. It governs how warnings are released, how interventions unfold, and how humanity is given space to respond freely. Protocol is not weakness, it is wisdom. But there are moments when protocol itself becomes a liability, when waiting would allow something unauthorized to embed itself too deeply. Breaking protocol does not mean chaos. It means priority override. It means an immediate response was required because the cost of delay exceeded the value of restraint. Archangel Michael's authority is not symbolic. He is a defender, an enforcer, and a protector of divine order. When he intervenes, it is because a threat has escalated beyond passive correction. His involvement confirms that what was attempted carried weight, intention, and potential consequence. This was not a minor deviation. It was a calculated movement that required decisive interruption. What makes this alert extraordinary is not only who delivered it, but how directly it came. There was no gradual unveiling, no soft lead-in, no extended preparation. The alert was delivered sharply because the window was narrow. This tells us something important. The attempt had reached a critical threshold. It had progressed far enough to require immediate interception, but not far enough to be irreversible. That narrow margin is where Michael's authority operates most effectively. There is also a reason this alert is being communicated to awareness rather than handled entirely behind the scenes. Some interventions require human alignment to stabilize the outcome. Awareness becomes part of the enforcement. When people know, adjust, and remain alert, the interception holds. When people remain unaware, halted movements often attempt to re-enter through alternate paths. This is why this message is being released now and not simply resolved silently. Michael's presence also reframes the emotional tone of this moment. This is not a message of fear, it is a message of defense. Protection does not arrive with panic. It arrives with clarity. The sharpness you may feel is not threat. It is authority cutting through confusion. That distinction matters. Fear weakens discernment. Authority strengthens it. Another important detail is this. Michael does not intervene unless the outcome matters beyond the individual level. His assignments often involve collective impact, structural shifts, or protection over groups and regions. That tells us this alert is not isolated. It touches more than one life, more than one path. It intersects with broader movement, timing, and alignment. That does not mean everyone will feel it equally, but it does mean the implications extend beyond a single point. You may notice that this alert carries a sense of finality, as if a decision point has already passed. That is because it has. The interception already occurred. What remains now is reinforcement. Reinforcement happens through understanding, posture, and continued awareness. When protocol is broken, it is because the decision was already made in favor of protection. There is relief in that truth if you allow it to settle. Michael's authority also brings assurance. He is not sent to warn without covering. Where he intervenes, defense is active. Where he stands, escalation is restrained. That does not mean vigilance ends, but it does mean panic is unnecessary. Calm alertness is the correct response. Calm preserves clarity. Clarity maintains alignment. As this message continues, you will begin to see why this intervention could not wait, and why awareness itself is part of the protection. What follows builds on this authority, not away from it. The foundation being laid here explains everything that comes next. Hold on to that. What you are about to understand reframes the urgency you've felt and reveals why this moment is not about danger, but about decisive protection already in motion. Hold on. What comes next changes everything. Type "I stand alert" in the comments if this resonates with you. Lesson code 419 is now activated. As this interception was released through authority, I feel led to speak directly to those whose hearts are burning right now. This message is not sustained by voices alone, but by vessels willing to sow so that light keeps reaching hidden places. When you give, you are planting oil into a lamp that guides souls before darkness ever reaches them. I hear the Lord saying, what you release in obedience, I multiply in impact. This is not a donation. It is a prophetic response to a divine alert. Those who move now are stepping into alignment, not obligation. Support this mission through Super Thanks, membership, or PayPal. The links are in the description, and the PayPal QR code is appearing now. Release your seed, and let heaven mark your obedience with increase. January 13th is not significant because of what people saw, but because of what shifted beneath the surface. Some dates carry weight not because they are celebrated, but because they are contested. In the spirit realm, time is not just measured, it is used. Certain windows open, alignments converge, and movements are scheduled around moments when resistance is lowest or attention is divided. January 13th was one of those moments, and that is why it was marked long before it arrived. When a date carries spiritual weight, it often passes quietly on the surface. People go to work, routines continue, and nothing outward appears different. Yet beneath that normalcy, permissions are tested and boundaries are examined. January 13th functioned as a threshold. It was a point where something sought to move from planning into execution. The transition is always the most dangerous stage, because once execution begins, reversal becomes far more costly. This is why timing matters so much in divine intervention. Heaven does not interrupt randomly. Interventions are precise because timing determines outcome. If intervention comes too early, it can be dismissed or ignored. If it comes too late, damage has already taken root. January 13th sat exactly between those extremes. It was late enough that intent was clear, but early enough that consequence was not sealed. That is what made it so critical. Dates like this often feel heavy without explanation. People report restlessness, unusual dreams, sudden clarity, or a sense that something is approaching without knowing what it is. That is not coincidence. When timelines converge, sensitivity increases. Awareness rises not because people are told, but because alignment is shifting. January 13th carried that pressure. It was a convergence point where unseen movement pressed against the boundaries of permission. Another reason this date matters is because it represented culmination. What was attempted did not originate on January 13th. It had been building quietly over time. Strategies like this rely on patience. They move incrementally, testing limits, adjusting approach, and waiting for the right moment to advance. January 13th was that moment, the point chosen for escalation. That alone explains why interception occurred when it did. In spiritual terms, escalation is when intent becomes action. Before escalation, correction is easier. After escalation, resistance becomes more complex. January 13th was the last moment before escalation could lock in. That is why it could not be ignored, delayed, or softened. The response had to be decisive, because the timing was decisive. It is also important to understand that dates marked in the spirit realm often affect different people in different ways. Some feel an immediate shift. Others notice nothing until later. Some experience clarity. Others experience disruption. It does not mean the date was insignificant for those who felt nothing. It means the impact was operating in layers. Not all layers surface at the same time. January 13th also functioned as a divider between trajectories. One path continued forward as intended by the hidden attempt. The other path emerged through interception. From that point on, outcomes diverge. This is why awareness after the date matters just as much as awareness during it. Once a trajectory is altered, reinforcement is required to keep it from drifting back toward its original direction. This is where human response becomes relevant again. When dates like this pass unnoticed, intercepted movements often attempt to reassert themselves subtly. They do not repeat the same approach, they adjust. That is why understanding the significance of January 13th is not about looking backward, but about stabilizing what changed. Recognition anchors the shift. Another layer to this state is accountability. Once a date is marked and intervention occurs, responsibility shifts. What was once solely a matter of unseen enforcement becomes a matter of conscious alignment. People who are aware become stewards of the outcome. That stewardship does not require fear or constant vigilance, but it does require intentional presence. Ignoring what was revealed weakens the boundary that was restored. January 13th also serves as a reminder that not all battles are loud. Some are decided quietly, through timing, authority, and exposure. The fact that this date did not erupt into visible chaos is not evidence that nothing happened. It is evidence that intervention was effective. Prevention rarely makes headlines, but it preserves futures. As days move forward from January 13th, many will begin to notice subtle redirections. Delays that feel inconvenient but prove protective. Interruptions that block plans that no longer fit. Sudden clarity about what needs to change. These are not random. They are after effects of a timeline being adjusted. When something is intercepted, ripples follow. This is why January 13th cannot be dismissed as just another day. It marked the mode when something was stopped. Now the moment was something was raw. A distinction changes everything. You are not standing in the aftermath of failure. You are standing in the evidence of protection. The weight of this state is not meant to burden you, but to steady you. As this message continues to unfold, keep January 13th in perspective. It is not a point of fear, but a point of reference. It explains why urgency was required, why authority intervened, and why awareness now matters more than ever. But with attempted reached its limit on that date. What follows from here depends on how clearly that limit is understood and respected. To understand what truly happened, you must understand what an intersection is and what it is not. An intersection is not a reaction born out of panic, nor is it a last-minute scramble to fix something already lost. An intersection is a calculated, authoritative disruption designed to stop momentum at a precise point before consequence becomes permanent. It is the difference between damage control and outcome control. What occurred here was outcome control. Divine intervention does not operate the way human intervention does. Humans react when problems become visible. Heaven intervenes when it becomes measurable. Long before something manifests outwardly, its direction is already established inwardly. Interception targets direction, not appearance. It stops movement before it hardens into reality. That is why many divine interventions appear invisible on the surface while being decisive beneath it. This interception worked by interrupting flow. Every plan, seen or unseen, relies on continuity. It needs uninterrupted progression to reach its intended result. Interception breaks that continuity. It inserts resistance where none existed before. It disrupts timing, misaligns coordination, and collapses efficiency. What was moving smoothly suddenly encountered obstruction. That obstruction was not random. It was strategic. One of the most misunderstood aspects of divine intervention is the assumption that heaven always removes the threat entirely. That is rarely how it works. More often, heaven restricts, limits, or redirects. Complete removal is not always necessary. When momentum is broken and awareness is activated, the original outcome becomes unattainable. The plan may still exist in theory, but it loses power in practice. Another key element of interception is exposure. Exposure does not always mean public revelation. Sometimes it simply means awareness being granted to those who need to know. Once awareness enters, secrecy loses its advantage. A plan that depended on remaining unseen becomes unstable. Every adjustment it attempts to make increases the chance of further detection. That instability alone can dismantle what once seemed carefully constructed. This is why divine intervention often feels subtle rather than dramatic. Drama is not required when precision is sufficient. The goal is not to alarm, but to realign. The goal is not to punish, but to prevent. Interception preserves free will while still protecting outcome. It does not force compliance. It creates clarity. Clarity allows individuals to choose alignment rather than drift unknowingly. Another important truth is that divine intervention respects timing more than emotion. Even when a threat exists, intervention may be delayed until the moment when its interruption will be most effective. That can be difficult to understand from a human perspective, especially when waiting feels risky. But intervention too early can be ignored, dismissed, or bypassed. Intervention at the right moment cannot be undone. In this case, the interception occurred when the attempt crossed from intention into execution readiness. That is the most efficient point of disruption. At that stage, resources have been committed, expectations set, and movement aligned. When flow is broken at that moment, recovery becomes exponentially more difficult. The cost of rebuilding exceeds the value of continuing. Divine intervention also works through limitation. After an interception, what once flowed freely begins to encounter resistance everywhere. Delays multiply. Coordination fails. Motivation weakens. Opportunities close unexpectedly. These are not punishments. They are constraints. Constraints prevent unauthorized advancement. They buy time for stabilization and redirection. This is also why awareness following intervention is critical. When people remain unaware, constrained plans often attempt to adapt quietly. When people are aware, adaptation becomes harder. Awareness reinforces the boundary that was established. It locks the intervention into place by removing the conditions that allowed the attempt to progress in the first place. It is important to note that interception does not mean the absence of further attempts. It means the original trajectory has been broken. Future attempts, if any, will not carry the same momentum, clarity, or alignment. They will be reactive rather than strategic. That shift alone significantly reduces effectiveness. Divine intervention also operates within authority structures. When Archangel Michael intervenes, it is not symbolic. It signals that enforcement has been authorized at the highest level. Enforcement does not always look forceful, but it is final. Once enforcement is activated, boundaries are no longer negotiable. What was once tested is now restricted. Another aspect of interception is redirection. While one path is blocked, another often opens. That opening may not be immediately obvious, but it exists. Interception creates space for alternate outcomes to emerge. This is why many people experience unexpected clarity or opportunity after such moments. When one timeline collapses, another becomes accessible. Finally, divine intervention is not meant to be admired from a distance. It invites cooperation. Cooperation does not require effort beyond awareness and alignment. It requires staying awake, responsive, and willing to adjust when redirection occurs. Resistance to redirection weakens the benefit of interception. Acceptance strengthens it. What happened was not chaos. It was correction. Not punishment, but preservation. Not delay, but protection. The interception worked because it arrived at the exact moment required, through the exact authority required, and with the exact level of exposure required. What follows now is stabilization, and that depends on continued clarity. Understanding how interception works prepares you for what comes next. Because once momentum is broken, the next phase is not reaction. It is repositioning. And repositioning determines everything that unfolds from here. This alert was never meant for everyone, and that distinction is intentional. Not all messages are broadcast to all people, because not all people are positioned to receive them. This is not about worth or hierarchy, it is about assignment. Some are called to move, others are called to witness, and some are called to watch. This alert is for the watchers, the ones whose role is awareness, discernment, and timely response. Watchers are not always the loudest or the most visible. In fact, they are often overlooked. They live ordinary lives, carry ordinary responsibilities, and move quietly through their days. Yet inwardly, they are alert. They notice subtle shifts. They sense when something changes in the atmosphere before there is language for it. They feel unease without panic, urgency without chaos, and clarity without explanation. These are not accidents. They are indicators of sensitivity. If this message has drawn your attention in an unusual way, that is one of the first signs. Watchers do not stumble into alerts like this randomly. They are drawn by resonance. Something within them recognizes the tone, the timing, and the weight of the message. It feels familiar, even if the content is new. That familiarity is not memory, it is alignment. Another sign of a watcher is discomfort with complacency. When everything appears calm, watchers often feel restless. Not anxious but alert. They are not satisfied by surface-level explanations when something deeper feels active. This does not mean they suspect danger everywhere. It means they are attentive to layers others overlook. They sense when calm is genuine and when it is manufactured. Watchers also tend to experience confirmation in fragments. A phrase here, a moment there, a repeated impression that refuses to leave. These fragments rarely form a full picture on their own, but they accumulate. Over time, they create a pattern. When a message like this appears, those fragments suddenly align. What was scattered becomes coherent. That moment of coherence is recognition. It is also important to understand what watchers are not. They are not driven by fear. Fear clouds perception. Watchers are driven by clarity. They do not panic when alerts arise. They focus. They listen. They adjust. Their strength is not in reaction, but in response. This is why awareness is entrusted to them. They can hold it without distorting it. This alert is also for those who have felt a quiet sense of responsibility without knowing why. A feeling that awareness itself matters. That knowing something carries weight, even if no immediate action is required. That sense of responsibility is not imagined. It is part of the watcher's role. Awareness is not passive. It stabilizes outcomes simply by being held consciously. Some watchers will question themselves. They will wonder if they are overthinking, imagining patterns, or assigning meaning where none exists. That questioning is natural, but it should not override resonance. Discernment does not eliminate doubt. It navigates through it. The key difference is persistence. Messages not meant for you fade quickly. Messages meant for you linger. Another indicator is timing. Watchers often encounter alerts at moments when they are unusually receptive. During transitions, pauses, or moments of reflection. The timing feels deliberate. You did not search for it. It arrived. That arrival is part of the signal. Watchers are positioned where they can receive information without distortion. This alert is also for those who understand that awareness does not always require immediate visible action. Some roles operate quietly. Stabilization often happens beneath the surface. Not every assignment involves speaking or leading. Some involve holding alignment so others can move safely. Watchers create space for clarity by maintaining it themselves. It is also worth noting that watchers are often underestimated by others and by themselves. Their contribution is not always recognized because it is preventative rather than reactive. Prevention rarely receives acknowledgement because its success is invisible. When something does not happen, few notice. Yet that absence is often the result of watchful awareness. If you are a watcher, you may have experienced moments where a quiet nudge prevented a poor decision, a delay avoided harm, or a pause created protection. These moments often seem small in isolation, but they are not. They are evidence of alignment working as intended. This alert builds on that same principle, but on a broader scale. This message is not asking you to do more than you are already equipped to do. It is asking you to remain who you are, to stay alert without becoming anxious, to stay aware without becoming obsessive, to stay grounded while recognizing significance. Balance is key. Watchers operate best when calm and centered. As this unfolds, resist the urge to explain everything to everyone. Not all information is meant for all ears. Discernment includes knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. Awareness does not demand broadcast. It demands stewardship. Hold what you have received responsibly. If this alert resonates deeply, take that as confirmation of assignment, not pressure. You are not being recruited into something new. You are being reminded of something already active within you. The role of the watcher is not glamorous, but it is essential. Outcomes depend on it more often than people realize. What comes next will clarify what response looks like for watchers specifically. It will not be dramatic or overwhelming, but it will be precise. Awareness has already positioned you. Now it will show you how to remain aligned as the situation continues to stabilize. Now that the interception has occurred and awareness has been released, the focus shifts to what must be addressed. This is not about reacting to what was attempted, but about responding correctly to what was revealed. Interception stops momentum, but response stabilizes outcome. Without response, halted movement looks for new entry points. Addressing what happened does not require alarm or drastic measures. It requires alignment, intention, and clarity. The first thing that must be addressed is posture. Not physical posture, but internal posture. How you hold this awareness matters. Panic weakens it. Indifference dilutes it. Calm attentiveness strengthens it. The correct posture right now is steady alertness. This means you are aware without being consumed, present without being tense. When posture is stable, the boundary created by interception holds firm. The second thing that must be addressed is attention. Hidden attempts thrive where attention is scattered. Distraction creates gaps. Addressing this moment means intentionally reducing noise. It does not require withdrawing from life, but it does require discernment about what you allow to occupy your focus. Attention is not just mental energy, it is directional power. Where attention goes, influence follows. Keeping attention grounded prevents redirection. Another critical element is discernment in decision-making. After interception, small choices matter more than people realize. This is not because everything becomes dangerous, but because alignment is being recalibrated. Decisions that once felt neutral may now carry weight. You may feel prompted to pause, delay, or reconsider certain steps. These prompts are not obstacles. They are course corrections. Addressing them promptly prevents drift. It is also important to address internal resistance. Some people resist awareness because it feels inconvenient. Others resist because it challenges comfort. Ignoring what has been revealed does not restore peace. It creates vulnerability. Addressing this means being honest with yourself about where you feel reluctant to adjust. Resistance often points directly to the area that needs alignment most. Another aspect that must be addressed is spiritual complacency. Complacency does not mean negligence. It means assuming stability without maintenance. Interception creates stability, but maintenance sustains it. This does not require constant effort, but it does require consistency. Staying grounded, reflective, and receptive keeps alignment intact. Addressing this moment also involves recognizing what is not required. You are not being asked to fix everything, explain everything, or control outcomes. Overextension weakens clarity. The response required is proportionate, not extreme. Overreaction creates noise that can obscure discernment. Underreaction creates gaps. Balance is essential. One of the most important things to address is communication, both internal and external. Internally, pay attention to recurring impressions. Do not dismiss them, but do not exaggerate them either. Externally, speak with restraint. Not every insight needs to be shared. Discernment includes knowing when silence preserves strength. Addressing this moment wisely means guarding clarity, not broadcasting speculation. It is also necessary to address timing. After an interception, there is often a temptation to rush into action to secure the outcome. That impulse is understandable, but not always a line. Sometimes the most effective response is patience paired with awareness. Movement that is not timed correctly can undermine what has already been protected. Addressing timing means trusting that not all responses are immediate. Another layer that must be addressed is trust. Interception is evidence of protection already in motion. Doubting that protection creates unnecessary strain. Trust does not mean disengagement. It means cooperation without anxiety. When trust is present, awareness becomes light rather than heavy. That lightness allows discernment to function clearly. This moment also invites a review of boundaries. Boundaries are not walls, they are definitions. Where have boundaries been unclear? Where have limits been flexible when they should have been firm? Addressing boundaries now reinforces the intervention that already occurred. Clear boundaries prevent unauthorized influence from regaining access. Addressing this alert also means watching for subtle shifts in environment and relationships, not with suspicion but with awareness. Sometimes stabilization involves separation, not dramatic, but natural. Certain conversations may lose relevance. Certain influences may fade. Allow these shifts without forcing them. Resistance to separation can reopen doors that were closed for protection. Another important element is humility. Awareness is not a badge, it is a responsibility. Pride distorts perception. Humility keeps it clear. Addressing this moment humbly means remaining teachable, grounded, and open to correction. Even watchers require adjustment. Humility ensures that awareness remains accurate rather than inflated. Finally, what must be addressed now is continuity. This is not a one-day response. It is an ongoing posture. Interception handled the critical moment. Continuity ensures long-term stability. This does not mean constant vigilance, but consistent alignment. Small, steady adjustments over time preserve outcomes far more effectively than dramatic reactions. What was attempted had been stopped. What remains is stewardship. Stewardship of awareness. Stewardship of alignment. Stewardship of response. When these are addressed correctly, the interception does not weaken, it strengthens. The situation does not escalate, it settles. And clarity does not fade, it deepens. What comes next will reveal how this response begins to produce visible effects. The stabilization process has already started. Understanding how it unfolds will help you recognize confirmation when it appears and peace when it settles. Once an intersection occurs, the most important changes are not always visible at first. In fact, the clearest evidence that something has shifted is often subtle. Silence where there should have been pressure. Calm where tension was expected. Delay where momentum once felt unstoppable. These are not coincidences. They are signs that a trajectory has been altered and that the environment is recalibrating around a new outcome. One of the first changes after interception is a disruption of flow. What once seemed to move effortlessly may now feel fragmented or slowed. This is not resistance for its own sake. It is containment. Interception introduces friction intentionally. That friction prevents unauthorized momentum from rebuilding. It forces reevaluation, recoordination, and often exhaustion on the side of what was attempting to move forward. Effort increases while effectiveness decreases. That imbalance is by design. Another immediate shift is internal. Many people notice a sudden clarity about what no longer fits. Decisions that once felt acceptable begin to feel misaligned. Conversations lose their appeal. Plans that were once exciting feel strangely empty. This is not loss. It is refinement. When a timeline is adjusted, alignment tightens. What does not belong begins to fall away naturally, without force. You may also notice heightened sensitivity in the days following interception. Not anxiety, but awareness. Subtle cues stand out more clearly. Patterns become easier to recognize. This sensitivity is temporary but important. It allows for fine-tuning while the new alignment settles. Ignoring it does not negate the shift, but honoring it accelerates stabilization. Another common change is delay. Doors that were about to open may pause unexpectedly. Timelines stretch. Response is slow. This can be frustrating if misunderstood, but delays after intersection are protective. They prevent premature movement while the environment adjusts. Rushing during this phase can undermine what has been secured. Patience is not passivity here, it is cooperation. Externally, you may observe interruptions in systems or coordination that once appeared smooth. Less communications increase. Plans require revision. What once aligned effortlessly now demands attention. These disruptions are not failures. They are evidence that flow has been interrupted at a structural level. Rebuilding that flow will require more effort than the original plan can sustain. Emotionally, many experience an unexpected calm. This can feel confusing, especially when an alert carried urgency. But urgency does not always produce anxiety. When danger is neutralized, the nervous system often relaxes. That calm is not denial, it is confirmation. It signals that protection is active and that escalation has been prevented. Another shift involves authority dynamics. After intersection, influence often redistributes. Voices that once carried weight may lose traction. Others gain clarity and confidence unexpectedly. This is not about power struggles, it is about alignment. Authority follows alignment. When alignment shifts, authority follows suit. You may also notice that attempts to revisit old narratives feel hollow. Justifications that once made sense no longer convince. Rationalizations lose their grip. This is because the environment that supported them has changed. Interception does not just stop movement. It alters context. In a new context, old strategies fail. It is important to understand that these changes are not meant to be analyzed obsessively. Overanalysis creates noise. Observation is enough. Notice without attacking anxiety. Acknowledge without forcing interpretation. The shift will reveal itself clearly over time. Within 24 to 72 hours after interception, many experience confirmation through unexpected reassurance. A conversation, a message, a moment of clarity that settles uncertainty. These confirmations are not dramatic signs, they are stabilizers. They reinforce trust and reduce the urge to interfere. Another immediate change is reduced urgency around control. When outcomes are secured, the need to manage every detail diminishes. You may feel less compelled to fix, explain, or anticipate. That release is healthy. It indicates that responsibility has returned to its proper place. You are no longer compensating for unseen instability. It is also common for rest patterns to shift. Sleep may deepen or vivid dreams may occur briefly. These are signs of recalibration. The system is adjusting to reduce threat. Allow this adjustment without resistance. What matters most during this phase is restraint. Do not rush to label every inconvenience as a sign. Do not assume every delay is negative. Let the shift settle. Stability requires time to anchor. Interference, even well-intentioned, can disrupt that process. This is also the phase where trust must deepen. The interception already occurred. Protection is active. You are not waiting for intervention. You are living in its aftermath. Acting as though intervention still needs to happen creates unnecessary strain. As awareness integrates, you will begin to recognize how much was prevented rather than how much was lost. That realization brings gratitude rather than fear. Gratitude strengthens alignment. Fear weakens it. Stay present in this phase. Let changes reveal themselves without forcing meaning. You'll be glad you stayed for what's about to be revealed, because the next stage explains how this shift begins to produce visible outcomes beyond the subtle. Type "I receive alignment" in the comments if this resonates with you. Blessing code 862 is now activated. As the shift settles and protection becomes clear, I want to speak to those who feel the quiet confirmation right now. What you are witnessing through this message is light intercepting darkness before it spreads. When you give, you are helping that light travel further, reaching souls who may never know what was prevented, but will live safely because of it. I hear the Lord saying, "Those who sow in this hour secure peace for others." This is not charity. It is obedience aligned with timing. Do not hesitate if your spirit feels prompted. Activate your support through Super Thanks, membership, or PayPal. The links are in the description, and the PayPal QR code is on screen now. Release your seed, and let heaven seal it with protection and increase. After an intersection, after awareness is released, and after alignment begins to settle, a deeper question emerges: who carries the responsibility of holding what has been protected? The answer is not everyone. It is the remnant. The remnant is not defined by numbers, visibility, or influence. It is defined by responsiveness. These are the ones who recognize significance without needing spectacle, who understand timing without needing explanation, and who respond without needing pressure. The role of the remnant begins where observation ends. Watching alone is not enough. Awareness must translate into posture, and posture into participation. Participation does not always mean outward action, but it always means inward agreement. Agreement stabilizes outcomes. When the remnant aligns internally with what has been intercepted and corrected, the new trajectory strengthens. Without that agreement, intercepted momentum seeks new pathways. The remnant's role is not to amplify fear or speculate about what was attempted. That weakens clarity. The role is to reinforce alignment. This happens through calm discernment, intentional focus, and measured response. When the remnant remains grounded, the environment remains stable. Panic creates gaps. Stability closes them. One of the most important responsibilities of the remnant is discernment in sharing. Not every message is meant for every ear, but this alert was not meant to remain isolated either. There is a balance between silence and stewardship. Sharing with discernment expands protection. Sharing without wisdom dilutes it. Knowing when and where to release awareness is part of the assignment. This is why your engagement matters. Not as a digital habit, but as a spiritual action. When you like this message, it is not a gesture of approval. It is an act of alignment. When you share it, you are extending awareness to those positioned to receive it. When you comment, you are anchoring recognition. When you subscribe, you are committing to remain connected as clarity continues to unfold. These actions are not casual. They function as reinforcement points in the broader response. The remnant also plays a role in atmosphere. Atmosphere is shaped by attention, language, and expectation. Where the remnant focuses, stability follows. When attention is given to fear, fear grows. When attention is given to clarity, clarity extends. This does not mean ignoring reality. It means choosing which reality you empower. Another aspect of the remnant's role is patience. After an intersection, there is often a temptation to look for immediate visible proof. But stabilization is not always loud. The most effective protection often appears as normalcy restored. Patience allows confirmation to surface naturally. Impatience pushes for signs that are not necessary and can create unnecessary anxiety. The remnant also understands that not all action is movement. Sometimes action is restraint. Not responding to provocation. Not revisiting what has already been addressed. Not reopening conversations that no longer serve alignment. These forms of restraint are not passive. They are protective. They prevent re-entry points from forming. Another responsibility of the remnant is unity. Not uniformity, but unity of posture. Agreement does not require identical expression. It requires shared understanding. When the remnant holds a common awareness, even quietly, it creates a stabilizing field. That field makes it difficult for unauthorized influence to regain traction. You may notice that since this alert, certain conversations feel unnecessary, certain debates feel unproductive, and certain distractions feel obvious. This is not withdrawal, it is refinement. The remnant does not waste energy where it is not effective. Focus is preserved for what matters. This is also why remaining connected matters. Clarity often unfolds in stages. What is understood now prepares you for what will be revealed later. Disconnection creates fragmentation. Staying connected ensures continuity. Continuity strengthens outcomes. As part of the remnant, your role is not to carry the weight of the world. It is to carry awareness responsibly. That awareness, held consistently, does more than frantic action ever could. It locks in the correction that has already taken place. Remember this. The remnant does not rush ahead, and it does not lag behind. It moves in step with timing. When timing says wait, it waits. When timing says speak, it speaks. When timing says act, it acts. Discernment keeps timing clear. If you have felt a quiet confirmation while listening to this, that is recognition. Recognition is not coincidence. It is alignment acknowledging alignment. Do not dismiss it. Do not dramatize it. Simply honor it. Your action matters because awareness multiplied becomes protection extended. Engagement is not about growth metrics. It is about reach of clarity. The more those positioned to receive this alert are reached, the less space remains for hidden movement to operate. Stay present as this unfolds. What comes next brings visible confirmation of what has already been stabilized beneath the surface. Stay with this, not out of curiosity, but out of alignment. You'll recognize the significance when it appears. One of the clearest indicators that an interception had been successful is not chaos, but quiet correction. When something dangerous is stopped before it escalates, the result is often subtle stability rather than dramatic fallout. This is why many people misunderstand divine effectiveness. They look for visible disruption as proof, when in reality, the absence of disruption is often the evidence. What you are seeing now, what you may already be sensing, is not nothing happening. It is something not happening, and that distinction matters. The first sign the alert is already working is the unexpected pause in momentum. Plans that seemed certain may have slowed without explanation. Timelines that felt locked in may now appear flexible or uncertain. This does not mean confusion has taken over. It means control has shifted. Intercepted momentum cannot maintain its original speed. It must either stop, erupt, or collapse. That pause you notice is not weakness, it is containment. Another sign is the presence of peace where anxiety was expected. When people anticipate escalation and instead feel calm, that calm is not denial. It is confirmation. Fear is often loud when threats are active. When threats are neutralized, the emotional atmosphere changes. You may notice that conversations feel less charged, reactions less extreme, and outcomes less volatile. This emotional stabilization is not accidental. It is the byproduct of enforced boundaries. You may also observe an increase in interruptions. Not disruptions that cause harm, but interruptions that prevent progression. Meetings rescheduled. Decisions postponed. Key elements failing to align at the last moment. These interruptions are not random obstacles. They are safeguards. Interception introduces inefficiency into systems that were previously streamlined. That inefficiency protects against unauthorized advancement. Another sign the alert is working is the exposure of inconsistencies. Narratives that once held together begin to unravel. Explanations contradict themselves. Confidence weakens. When a plan loses its foundation, it cannot maintain coherence. Exposure does not always come through revelation. Sometimes it comes through erosion. What once sounded convincing now feels hollow. On a personal level, many notice an internal recalibration. There is less urgency to push, less pressure to decide, less fear of missing out. Instead, there is clarity about what is no longer necessary. This clarity is a direct result of alignment being restored. When alignment is off, people compensate through effort. When alignment returns, effort decreases. You may also notice that certain fears no longer have the same grip. Thoughts that once spiraled now stop short. Concerns that once felt overwhelming now feel manageable. This does not mean challenges have vanished. It means authority has reasserted itself. Fear thrives in uncertainty. Interception restores order, and order weakens fear. Another important sign is silence. Not the silence of avoidance, but the silence of restraint. When unauthorized movement is blocked, there is often a period of quiet recalibration. This silence can feel unsettling if misunderstood, but it is strategic. Silence prevents reactive adjustments. It forces stalled plans to reveal their limitations. Nothing rushed emerges from silence. You may also observe redirection disguised as inconvenience. Opportunities that fall through unexpectedly. Paths that close without explanation. These redirections are not losses, they are protections. Interception does not always remove danger by confrontation. Sometimes it removes access. When access is removed, risk disappears quietly. Another sign is the strengthening of discernment among those positioned to perceive it. Conversations become clearer. Boundaries become easier to maintain. Decisions feel cleaner. This sharpened discernment is not something you had to strive for. It emerges naturally when interference is reduced. When noise is removed, signal clarity increases. It is also worth noting what has not happened. There has been no sudden collapse, no uncontrolled fallout, no irreversible damage. That absence is not luck. It is evidence that the alert arrived in time. Prevention rarely announces itself. It simply preserves what would have been threatened. Some may mistake this stabilization for anticlimax. They expected fireworks and received quiet. But quiet is often the sound of order restored. The most effective interventions rarely satisfy the desire for drama. They satisfy the requirement for protection. As days continue, you may notice gradual normalization. Systems recalibrate. Conversations shift tone. Focus returns to what matters. This normalization does not mean the alert was unnecessary. It means it worked. When medicine works, symptoms recede. When protection holds, danger does not announce its retreat. Another sign is reduced reactivity in yourself. You may feel less compelled to monitor, analyze, or anticipate. This does not mean disengagement. It means trust has replaced vigilance. Trust is not passive. It is informed. It knows when something has been aggressed. Pay attention also to timing anomalies. Things happening just in time. Delays that prevent complications. Missed connections that avoid problems. These small adjustments are the fingerprints of ongoing stabilization. Interception is not a single moment. It is a process that continues to enforce boundaries over time. Finally, one of the strongest signs the alert is working is this: life continues. Not recklessly but securely. Continuity after threat is a gift. It is proof that what was attempted did not gain the foothold it sought. As this unfolds, resist the urge to question whether enough was done. Enough was done at the right moment, by the right authority. What remains is observation, gratitude, and alignment. The next part will help you understand what comes after stabilization, how outcomes begin to realign in ways that confirm protection on a larger scale. When an alert like this is heeded, the results do not arrive as spectacle. They arrive as alignment restored. Heeding does not mean obsessing over what was attempted, nor does it mean altering life through fear-based decisions. It means recognizing that a correction has already taken place and choosing to move in harmony with that correction. When this happens, outcomes shift quietly but decisively, and the difference becomes clear over time. The first thing that happens when this is heeded is stabilization at the foundation level. Foundations determine what can be built safely. If a foundation is compromised, everything above it becomes vulnerable. The interception addresses the foundation. Heeding it reinforces that repair. This creates long-term security rather than short-term relief. Stability replaces uncertainty not because circumstances are perfect, but because alignment is correct. Another outcome is protection through clarity. Confusion is one of the most effective entry points for unauthorized influence. When people are unclear, they hesitate. When they hesitate, momentum transfers to whatever is already moving. Heeding the alert sharpens clarity. Decisions become simpler. Distractions lose their appeal. When clarity is present, influence loses leverage. Those who heed this alert often notice that pressure decreases. Pressure thrives where misalignment exists. When alignment is restored, pressure dissipates naturally. This does not mean challenges disappear, but they no longer feel overwhelming. Weight shifts. What once felt heavy becomes manageable. This is one of the clearest confirmations that protection is active. Another result is favor through obedience. Obedience is not compliance. It is cooperation with timing. When you move in step with correction, doors that were previously difficult begin to open without force. Opportunities align without manipulation. This is not coincidence. Alignment attracts provision. When you are positioned correctly, provision meets you where you are. Heating also produces discernible redirection. Paths that once seemed right may no longer hold your attention. New options emerge that feel calmer, clearer, and more sustainable. This redirection is not loss. It is refinement. What is removed makes space for what fits the corrected trajectory. This is how protection often manifests, by preventing you from investing energy in what would later require rescue. Another important outcome is peace that persists. Temporary peace can be manufactured. Lasting peace cannot. When peace remains even after awareness of what was attempted, it is evidence that threat hath been neutralized. Fear does not coexist with secured outcomes. Peace is not ignorance. It is confidence in protection already established. Relationships may also shift when this is heeded. Not through conflict, but through clarity. Certain connections may fade naturally. Others may strengthen unexpectedly. This is not about judgment. It is about alignment. Relationships that support the corrected trajectory will remain. Those that pull against it will lose influence. This sorting process happens quietly, without force, when awareness is honored. Another outcome is increased sensitivity to timing. You may find yourself less impulsive and more deliberate. Decisions are not rushed. Opportunities are evaluated calmly. This measured approach prevents unnecessary exposure. Timing awareness is a form of protection. When you move at the right time, resistance decreases. Eating also produces internal confidence. Not arrogance, but steadiness. You trust your discernment more because it has been validated. This confidence does not make you reckless. It makes you grounded. You are less easily swayed by noise, opinion, or pressure. Grounded people are difficult to destabilize. There is also an outcome that many overlook: gratitude. Gratitude is not an emotional response. It is a stabilizing force. When you acknowledge protection rather than obsess over threat, you reinforce alignment. Gratitude closes the door to fear-based imagination. It keeps focus on what was preserved rather than what could have been lost. On a broader scale, heating contributes to collective stabilization. Individual alignment accumulates. When many hold awareness responsibly, the environment itself becomes resistant to hidden movement. This does not require coordination or communication. Alignment is cumulative. Quiet obedience by many creates strong boundaries for all. It is also important to note what does not happen when this is heated. There is no need for constant vigilance, no requirement to monitor every detail, no demand for dramatic action. Overreaction weakens outcomes. Eating is calm, consistent, and sustainable. It respects the work that has already been done rather than trying to redo it. As time passes, confirmation appears through continuity. Life moves forward without the disruption that could have occurred. Goals progress without unexpected collapse. Plans adjust without crisis. This continuity is not boring. It is a gift. Stability is often misunderstood because it lacks drama. But stability is what allows growth. If this alert is heeded, the future does not become uncertain. It becomes protected. Not by removing all risk, but by restoring order. Order allows freedom to function safely. When order is present, creativity, movement, and expansion can occur without fear. What remains now is not vigilance, but trust. Trust in the correction that has already taken place. Trust in the authority that intervened. Trust in the alignment that is settling. The final part will bring this full circle, offering assurance, upliftment, and clarity about how to move forward with confidence rather than concern. This is where everything comes together, not in tension, but in assurance. What began as an urgent interception now settles into clarity, and clarity gives way to confidence. You are not standing at the edge of uncertainty. You are standing within protection that has already been established. The alert was never meant to leave you unsettled. It was meant to awaken you to the fact that you were never alone in this moment, and never unguarded. The most important truth to carry forward is this: interception means defense succeeded. Something was attempted, something was halted, and something was preserved. That sequence matters. You are not reacting to a loss. You are living in the result of a victory that occurred before damage could take root. Heaven did not arrive late. Authority did not hesitate. Timing was exact. Archangel Michael's involvement was not about fear. It was about enforcement. Enforcement does not linger. Once boundaries are set, they hold. You are not required to relive the urgency of the alert every day. Now assurance takes its place. Assurance allows you to move forward without carrying unnecessary weight. There is also a deeper comfort here. When protocol is broken in favor of protection, it means you mattered enough for intervention to override process. That is not random. That is intentional. It reflects value, not vulnerability. You were not warned because you were weak, but because awareness would strengthen what had already been secured. As this message concludes, allow yourself to release any residual tension. You do not need to remain on edge to stay protected. Constant vigilance is not faith. It is fatigue. Protection that requires anxiety to maintain is not true protection. What has been established now holds through alignment, not effort. Victory in moments like this often looks like continuity. Life continues. Plans progress. Be settled. This is not anticlimax. It is confirmation. The greatest victories are the ones that preserve rather than repair. You are walking forward on ground that has already been secured. There is also upliftment in knowing that awareness has done its work. You heard. You recognized. You aligned. That is enough. You are not responsible for outcomes beyond your assignment. Carrying more than what is yours does not increase protection. It distorts balance. Balance is where clarity thrives. Moving forward, let calm be your indicator. When calm remains, the alignment is intact. When peace persists, boundaries are holding. You do not need constant signs to validate what has already been resolved. Trust is the final seal on intervention. This is also a moment to acknowledge gratitude, not outwardly dramatic, but inwardly steady. Gratitude grounds awareness. It keeps focus on what was preserved rather than what could have been lost. Gratitude turns alerts into anchors rather than alarms. If there is one posture to maintain after this, it is confidence without complacency. Confidence knows protection is active. Complacency assumes nothing matters. You are called to neither fear nor indifference, but clarity. Clarity keeps you responsive without being reactive. Let this message end where it was always meant to end. Not with urgency, but with peace. Not with warning, but with assurance. Not with uncertainty, but with trust. The interception did its work. Awareness did its part. Alignment is settling. You are covered. You are positioned. You are not late. You are not exposed. You are not required to understand every detail to benefit from the outcome. Understanding enough was sufficient. The rest is held where it belongs. Move forward knowing this. What was attempted did not succeed. What was protected remains intact. What was intercepted will not define what comes next. The path ahead is not marked by threat but by stability. Carry this calmly. Walk confidently. Remain aware but at peace. This chapter closes not with alarm, but with assurance, and that assurance is not temporary. Type "I walk in divine covering" in the comments if this resonates with you. Blessing code 931 is now activated. As this message closes in peace and assurance, I want to speak directly to those whose spirits feel settled right now. What you just received was not information, it was covering, and covering multiplies when it is supported. When you give, you become a steward of light, helping this message reach souls before darkness ever finds them. I hear the Lord saying, "Those who uphold my word will never lack my protection." This is not generosity, it is alignment with heaven's timing. Do not delay what your spirit already recognizes as obedience. Activate your support through Super Thanks, membership, or PayPal. The links are in the description, and the PayPal QR code is on screen. Release your seed now, and let heaven seal it with peace, provision, and lasting increase.